Yeah.
We are now.
All right, now we're back into it.
Awesome.
The test has been done, the sound has been checked, and I still need a producer because
We need just a producer so we can have somebody sitting there so we can talk to the producer. Like, I think that's something that every good like podcast has, where you can be talking and be like, hey, producer, can you
have this
Yeah.
peanuts and pretend the beer nuts is the
You can teach
producer.
one of your kids, one of your boys to
I
do
keep
it.
trying to get Dominic is most interested, and Riley's a ham. I don't
Yeah.
understand why he's not
Yeah.
into, you know.
Yeah, my Maddie would want absolutely nothing to do with it. She'd be mortified because that's her thing, is always constantly being embarrassed by everything that we do. Rowan would love it, but she's also 9, so I don't think give her a few years and
I've seen some young
she'll
kids in the spotlight.
She's also a bit bossy and a bit stubborn, so she'd be like yelling at us and telling us we're doing it wrong. And
I think that's what we need.
yeah,
I think we could go with that.
I keep telling her and telling Andrew, like, she needs to be like a party planner or like a wedding planner or something where it can be like, I'm gonna do it, and this is how we're gonna make it work. And I just don't know, she might butt heads with her clients a little bit, but she loves like planning things out. And then so whenever we have people over or something, like, she's got the whole night.
Nice. Does she do like, do you have like a lot of family involvement with family trips and stuff and all that, or like does she help plan those trips?
No. Well, she I mean, helps with, I guess, some ideas, and then gets really, really angry if we don't do exactly what she had in mind. So
Yeah.
Yeah.
You guys went down to New York last week?
We did. We just came back from New York.
Nice. How was that?
It was great. We ran a race, so we went down there. They have a 15K called the Boilermaker, because the Saranac and Utica Club Brewery is in Utica, where my wife's from. So we ran that race, and it ends, and they have like the big brewery party kind of thing. So that went well. I beat my wife by 1 second, or might have been 4 seconds, but the official time said 1. I don't know, but I beat her. That's all. That's
Nice.
really important. It was actually kind of funny because not that we need to hear the whole story of my race, but we went out and I told her beforehand, I'm like, we're going to run our own race, so don't feel like, you got to stay with me. And so I just took off immediately, went out way too fast, but I was, feeling really good until I hit like mile 8, because you do this big uphill at that point. And all of a sudden I look over on the last mile and she's passing me. I was like, no. So but then the last, 0.3 of a mile is this giant downhill. And so I just sprinted as hard as I could, and I went right by her. She didn't even know I passed her, because the finish line's so wide. And so I beat her by a second, which I think it was probably the best case scenario, because if I beat her by anything more than that, I think she would have been pissed, because she's been running for so long. And this is, I pick it up every once in a while, and I run every, 5 years or something.
Right.
So I think she would have been mad if I beat her by more than that. But if she had won, I would not have been able to live that down. So it kind of worked out great.
That was good. Did she see you when she passed you, or was it?
Oh yeah, she talked to me when she passed me, and I made it. I was like, just go, I'm dying. I was like, and every time I run this race, I should know better, because that last mile is a killer. But yeah, so she went flying by me, and then I caught her at the end. And then we spent the rest of the time there at a camp that we rented on a lake, and that was pretty awesome. Taught the kids how to fish, and they all caught their first fish. That was fun. Did a lot of kayaking, paddleboarding. We went to the wineries, so they have Finger Lake wineries up there, and we go. This is, I think, was the 5th or 6th year in a row that we've gone with Andrea's brother and his wife.
Mm-hmm.
And the first 3 years I didn't make it to dinner because I had a little too much wine and didn't feel so good. And then the next 2 years I was the DD for everybody, which was fine. I'm fine with that. And then this year I successfully made it through the entire wine trip.
Nice.
Yeah. So my Andrea's sister-in-law is pregnant, so she had to be the DD. So I didn't really have an excuse not to partake in the wine. I enjoy the wine. I just can't handle my alcohol very well. So
you were able to kind of get at a level where
it
didn't hurt.
Yeah. And you just took a trip as well. You guys went to Boston, right?
Yeah.
How was that?
That was great. We usually try to go down there every year and find something to do down there, because it's so close and there's a lot there. And Riley really wanted to see the Blue Man Group again.
So okay.
We went down. That was kind of what we centered it around. And then the rest of the day, so went to a Friday night show and then went to a Saturday. Just walked around all day.
Yeah.
In the heat. It was very
Looked like you
hot.
ate very well while you were down there.
Oh yeah, yeah.
So-
It was one of our great things when we go on vacation is we just eat wherever we can.
Yeah. I saw you had the pictures of all the old pubs and stuff that, that's what when we go down to Boston, Andrew and I used to go every year. We love going to all those, those old bars and having drinks and eating there and stuff. So
yeah, we didn't go into any.
you just walked through that area.
Yeah, we walked through the area and I took a lot of pictures of the places. Just when we walked around, it was typically with the boys.
Yeah.
And then when we went out on our own, I don't know, we just kind of walked around.
Yeah.
But Candy's not a big bar person in general. So I probably could have gone, but
well, that's like Andrew and I. She's much more of a bar person than I am, and so I have to find that balance of like, yeah, I'll go out with you, but I'm, as I said, I don't not a big drinker, so can't keep up with her, but that's okay.
It's nice to in some bars though. It's nice to just kind of sit and have one drink and kind of absorb the atmosphere.
We want to go down there and do the Freedom Trail with the girls because
Yeah.
we're like big in that, like we love the history stuff, and we've done the Freedom Trail, like all the different tours and stuff on it, and over different years and stuff. So although we've got to do a lot of teaching of the history, I think for that we're talking to Maddie about it the other day. Actually, I don't even know why I think probably because we took a trip down there recently, and we were saying something about the Revolutionary War to her, and like, yeah, didn't you learn about that in third grade? She's like, oh, I learned all about it. Yeah, I know all about the Revolutionary War. And like, but I don't remember any of it. Like, so you didn't learn it. Oh no, I learned all about it. I know all about it, but I don't remember any of it. So it's like, oh, okay. So but I think, if you're going to do something like that, kind of makes it more engaging for them. So we're gonna do that. We just booked a trip today to New York City for next April. We're gonna go do like the Ellis Island and the Tenement Museum, and all that, because we teach immigration in fourth grade with our kids, and so we've always wanted to go check it out because we talk to the kids about it. We do virtual tours online, so now we're gonna go see it, and we're gonna probably do a little teaching of the girls before we go down. So that should be cool.
You're gonna take the opportunity to take some pictures and stuff, like
exactly.
Incorporate into your lessons.
Yeah, I think that's kind of the big idea is
that's awesome.
And be able to just having experienced it ourselves, I think will make those conversations richer that we have with the kids and our students and stuff. So it should be pretty cool.
Yeah, that's one of the things I like about Boston and all those historical things where they've got the plaques on everything.
Yeah.
And every time I've gone down there, I'll read them and get all interested. But it's kind of like you said with Maddie, like, hey, I learned it. I don't remember any of it. So every time I read it again, oh, this is so cool.
Exactly.
I don't know how many times I've read about the Bell in Hand Tavern.
Yeah, right. Exactly.
But every time it's this new fascinating story to me.
We actually went to when we were in New York, went to the Women's Suffrage Museum. So apparently the suffrage movement started in Seneca Falls, New York, which is just this little tiny town, but that's where the first big conference or whatever was held, and so there's a national historical site there, and there's like a little museum, and then like next door is this old restored church where the meeting was first held. And I learned Frederick Douglass was there and was one of the speakers at it, which I thought was really cool. I had never known that, and I didn't honestly know a whole lot about the suffrage movement other than I know some basics, but so it was kind of cool and interesting. Although going with kids, whenever you go someplace like that, it's kind of like when we went to the aquarium too. They don't stop. They just kind of keep flowing through everything. So like, I want to stop and read all the things now. I'm sure I was the same way as a kid, but
so you're gonna have to educate me, because every time I hear about the suffrage movement, I think I understand what that was, and then I'm like, do I understand? So correct me if I'm wrong. Was that like the women's
rights? Yeah, that's exactly what it was. And so it's kind of interesting too, because they were talking about how at the first meeting, all of the meeting, like they had different I don't know what the word is, but like different little discussions or topics, kind of things going on, activities or whatever, but each one was chaired by a man. Even though it was a women's rights convention. And they actually said that two of the leaders of the movement actually got into this like really heated discussion at one point, not at the first convention, but later on, because they wanted to one of them wanted to put a woman in charge of leading this next conference or whatever. And the other one's like, no, we have to have a man do it. and so it's kind of this interesting dynamic. Well, this woman's like the leader of the suffrage movement, but yet she still felt like she had to have a man lead things in order for it to be like taken, I don't know, taken seriously or what. And she even kind of reflected on that and said, oh, I had to come to terms with this, like, hey, no, this is like a women's rights movement. We don't need a man to do it. We can have women do it. I was also thinking about, how cool it was, because so they had this, it was basically like their Declaration of Rights that they did at this first convention. It's this whole big thing about how, it says that all men are created equal, but they're not all equal. They don't all have equal rights because women don't have the same rights as men. And it kind of goes through and lists all these different things about how, a woman needs a man's permission to be divorced. And if they're divorced, then the man gets all the thing. And it had all these different things that they were kind of basically saying in it.
So this was the argument for suffrage.
It was sort of like their what do you call that?
Manifesto?
Like, yeah, exactly. Yeah. And so it's etched into this waterfall thing that they have outside there. But it was just kind of interesting to read all about that. So anyway, it was a cool experience. It was kind of neat for the girls. I think Maddie kind of got something out of it. I think for Rowan, who's 9, it was totally over her head, but it was neat. And it was something that was totally unexpected. Like I had no idea it was there. And we just, hey, let's stop here on the way home to break up the trip. Yeah. That's pretty cool.
That's interesting too with, like, I have 2 sons and 3 sons and 1 daughter. And it's interesting, like that the suffrage movement. You got daughters and a wife, obviously. And like, where Rowan is younger and doesn't quite understand it at that level, but as Maddie's age now, like, what's her reflection on that? Is it?
Yeah, I mean, we didn't talk too much. I'm surprised we didn't talk more about afterwards about it, because usually we're really good about that. But we didn't talk too much about it. But it's definitely something that Andrea, I think Andrea and I, but specifically Andrea, because I think the message is different coming from a woman. Talk a lot about equal rights of women and being a strong woman and that sort of thing, and how things. Andrea talks to Maddie about how she has experienced sexism or different things, negative things that have happened to her because she was a woman, and how, putting up with comments from men that she doesn't know as she's walking down the street, or, people just treating her differently or negatively because she's a woman. And so I think Andrea's always done a really good job of that. I think Andrea's done a really good job of, bringing to light for Maddie some positive female role models. She was really big into RBG and
Kim Kardashian.
Well, Maddie loves Kim Kardashian. But people like Michelle Obama and just a lot of really powerful, Jessica Meir, the astronaut, and Andrea loves, and sharing that with Maddie, I think she's done a really good job of. And then obviously with the Roe versus Wade stuff that's been out, that's kind of been a big topic of conversation. Our house, Maddie's brought that up a lot.
Yeah.
And so it was sort of at the forefront anyway. And so it was kind of perfect timing to then go to this, this place. It's kind of cool. Just a neat experience.
Yeah, that's really cool. It's interesting with kids, and as they come to those age of realizing things for themselves, because especially now, I don't recall any protests when we were in middle school, where it was kind of like, hey, I'm gonna go do a walkout. That did not happen in our school. But I think both of us experienced that. We talked about that last time, and or before. And but it's funny with like the women's suffrage thing, and with my boys, they look white. So anytime like I bring up some sort of like black thing or whatever, it's like, you know what, you probably do not have to face this at all.
They don't experience it.
But it's really cool that they have a good perspective. Like they've met my dad's side of the family. They've interacted with them, and they've interacted. I mean, all kinds. This place is pretty diverse anyway, so they've been fortunate enough to just experience all kinds of people along the way. That tolerance or empathy or whatever you want to call it is there. You don't have to kind of teach it.
Right. Well, and I think too, like, like I said, we try, especially Andrea has done a really good job of trying to model it, not necessarily always explicitly, like saying, hey, you know, what have you experienced, or let's talk about this topic, but like she just has, we try to model empathy, we try to model you know, being a woman who is strong and independent, you know, things like Andrea does a ton of work around the house, and like we got all our wood delivered, and Andrew was adamant, I'm gonna go stack all that wood in the back of the house, and Maddie, you're gonna do it with me. And you know, I was working or something, and I'll help you when I get home. No, we're gonna do it all on our own. You know, it's just like that kind of thing. Or you know, we get a huge snowstorm, Andrew's gonna say, hey, oh, let's all get all our stuff on, we're gonna go outside and do it. You know, it's just trying to that naturally kind of instill that idea of like, you can do anything, you can do, whether it's physical or mental or anything, you can do it. You know, just trying to, like I said, model it and stuff, not necessarily always explicit.
Yeah, that's cool to have that model.
Yeah. And so your boys, what I was kind of getting at is your boys have you and Candy, who are empathetic people and, you know, good people, good role models for them. And so I think that probably helps as well.
Yeah. Yeah, they definitely, I think they have good source material to work with.
Exactly. Exactly.
Which is, it's nice. Yeah.
That is water, not beer, for anybody that's listening.
Cracking the brews. Yeah, it's not a bad idea, actually. I wish I had.
Not that there'd be anything wrong with us drinking beer while talking and recording, but just.
I actually was talking, you met Jacob, right? Or no, you didn't meet Jacob. He was gonna join us a couple weeks ago. Somebody else did. Gary and Freddie did. Anyway, we were talking about recording together and had some ideas, and we've been talking about getting a bottle of Johnny Walker Blue like forever, at least a year now. And because he was getting some raise or something, and he's like, and I mentioned it, it's like, all right, when I get my raise, when I get my promotion, we'll buy the bottle. I'm like, okay, fine. Got a promotion. I brought it up recently. And it's like, we still haven't bought that bottle. It's like, all right, well, what if we do like a fundraiser? We'll record, we'll do like a Kickstarter for the podcast, raise money to buy the bottle of Johnny Walker Blue and like spicy Dorito chip or whatever. It's like the ghost pepper.
Oh yeah,
chip,
yeah.
Because he's all into. I'm into hot stuff too. So.
Yeah.
But we're like, and that would be fun too. I was like, yeah, we'll just tack that on there too. Great.
So would you then drink the bottle live on the podcast?
Not the full bottle.
I think that's what you should do. I think it should be, if you guys can raise enough money for us to buy the bottle, we will then drink the entire bottle.
In which case, I will invite many more guests to that show because, yeah,
that probably would not end well.
20-year-old me might have done it and still hurt really
badly. Yeah, long past those.
Yeah, I don't.
Those days.
I was just talking about. I did jiu-jitsu for the first time in a long time a couple weeks ago, and I drank heavily the night before, not really thinking that I'm going to be pretty sweaty and gross tomorrow at 9 a.m.
Yeah,
and it was. I made it through, but it was rough. Like I certainly felt like I could have done a much better job.
Yeah.
Had I not had alcohol coursing through my veins.
Yes. And that's one of the reasons why I do not miss drinking alcohol very much, because I never feel terrible in the mornings.
It's a good feeling to wake up to when you don't feel like hot garbage.
Mm-hmm.
Usually. Equality, that's what I was thinking of earlier. So when you were talking about the like going out and bringing in the wood and be like, no, we're gonna do it or whatever. So earlier today I was kind of thinking about equality in the sense of like, are people really equal, or is that just an idea that we kind of simplify to solve social issues like women's rights or black rights, or I mean, women and men, I guess, is a pretty like that's your base level of equal. Like, how do you define equal in that sense? And then after that, though, you kind of just making up stuff because you just kind of slapping labels on things and saying, are they equal or not? Like, whatever you want to label, you can label. But let's just bring it back to the men and women thing. What makes men and women equal? Like, we can do the same things, right? So there's nothing to say that men and women can't read a book, right?
Yeah, right.
They can't learn anything. And the only, like, without getting, let's get into it, whatever. The only like biological, the only difference, the unequal things would be like biologically. So men have a penis, women have a vagina.
They do? I did not know that.
Yeah,
Okay. Yes.
I've read some books.
Okay.
I've talked to some people. And so those are differences. They're not equal in material or anything, but what are they equal in?
I'm trying to wrap my head around so I would say that, I mean, I think men and women are equal. I don't think they are treated equal or equal in the way that they're treated in society, talking about like American society, let alone other places around the world. But I mean, I don't think they're always treated as equals. But I think that, and there may be situations where men are not treated as, you know what I mean? Like I think it can probably go both ways, but I think in general, probably women are generally get the short end of the stick on that.
Well, also, I mean, by default, if you treat a woman unequally than a man, you're treating a man unequally than a woman.
Right.
But I think what you're saying is, with the short end of the stick, women get the brunt, like, don't get the better part of that equality.
Exactly. And I think too, obviously this conversation is not getting into gender and, because
that's why I was like,
that's a whole nother thing. And I certainly, so we can leave that. But so what made you, so where did this come from? Like, what are your thoughts? I think maybe if I hear what your thinking is about this, I might be able to jump in.
I don't know. It was just thought that came to me earlier today, and it was kind of funny that the suffrage thing came up, because it was like, oh, that's kind of weird. I was thinking about that today. It's kind of that question of, why are we equal? Like, what are we saying is equal? If we're saying that we need to be treated equal, if everybody needs to be treated equal, I think there's a lot to be said where you should not treat people equally, in the sense of, let's just take children versus adults.
Right.
You will not treat a child the same way that you treat an adult.
Okay.
There's a reason for that.
Yeah.
Whatever that reason is, you can break it all down, but you can ultimately come to a reason, and society can say, okay, we shouldn't treat children the same as adults. You're going to have people that disagree along the way. I know, for example, like when I've, as a parent with the kids as young as they were, I was never one for baby talk or anything like that.
Yeah.
And I think it worked out well. And I knew a lot of parents who were one for baby talk, and their kids worked out great too.
Yeah.
But obviously there's a difference. We did not treat our kids with that same level of equality or inequality or whatever. So there's a balance.
But I think one thing that's a little bit different about that is that all kids, I mean, that's something that's sort of universal, that whether it's male or female, whether it's black, white, Asian, we're talking all kids don't necessarily get the rights and responsibilities that adults do because of their age. That's a little bit, I guess, different in my mind, because
so when you say rights and responsibilities, that comes into the legal society law.
Right.
Okay.
Well, not necessarily. It has to do with things like, you're not going to leave a 3-year-old home by themselves. That's like a responsibility to kind of look after themselves. Most people aren't going to leave their 3-year-old.
Well, it's also illegal to leave your.
Well, yes, but I think most people don't make that decision because they're like, oh, should I leave my 3-year-old home? No, it's illegal. I think the majority of people are like, I shouldn't leave my 3-year-old home because they're going to burn down the house or hurt themselves, or, you know what I mean? Most responsible people, I would say.
I should comment as I'm making faces.
Did you leave your 3-year-old home a lot?
2-year-old? No, no. It's I know. I completely know what you mean. I'm not trying to like dig into that at all. Like I think, but I think there are cases where you could leave a 3-year-old alone. Like you can't. I think. Well, there are cases where you have to leave a 3-year-old. So, and there are cases where 3-year-olds have been left alone and they've survived. So to say that you can't, it's not a good idea to leave your 3-year-old alone. Let's be very clear about this.
Yeah.
But what I'm saying is, I don't think it's a definitive, like, you can't leave your 3-year-old. Under the right circumstances, you can leave your 3-year-old home alone, and maybe those circumstances have to be perfect, but under the right circumstances that exists.
Yes. Well, and I also understand there are probably people that are in situations where they have to make horrible choices, like, do I leave my 3-year-old home alone, you know, because I can't find anybody to care for them or pay for anybody to care for, you know, so certainly those kind of things exist. But I think in general, you know, so anyway, I see that being a little bit of a different conversation than are men and women equal, or are, you know, people of different races, are they equal, or should they be treated equal? I think that's a different.
Why?
Because again, I think when you're talking about kids, you're talking about people that, depending on the age, can't care for themselves. They still have a developing brain, and you know, so it's just a little bit different. Like,
okay, so but we're not talking about leaving a woman home alone versus leaving a man home alone. Like, let's take that example out of it. I guess that
but you know, there's a lot of examples with, you know, because let a kid drive a car. You know, I'm not going to give my 9-year-old keys to a car and be like, okay, see you later.
Okay, so actually that's a good example, because then you can compare that to the countries where women are not allowed to drive cars.
Right.
Okay, so that's a good example right there.
Okay.
Comparing a kid being allowed to drive a car versus a woman being able to drive a car. Now, a kid, you just were giving that example as why it's a bad idea, right?
Yes.
What was that?
Why is it a bad idea for a kid to drive a car? Because they, I don't think are as physically capable of driving a car. I don't think that I mean, obviously they'd have to have a lot of training on how to do that, but I don't think in general they are probably mature enough to handle that responsibility. Some may be, and certainly there are some adults who aren't mature enough to handle the responsibility of driving a car, but I mean, there are always going to be those kind of exceptions. I mean, I think there's probably good reasons why in general we don't let kids drive until they're of a certain age. I think there are some examples of like kids who are working on a farm, maybe driving some farm machine, you know, that's, I think a little bit of a different scenario, but in general, I think society has decided it's probably not a good idea for young kids to be driving.
Yeah, I'd say that scenario of the farm too is, I mean, that's more of a tool than anything, as opposed to when you think of learning to drive on the road, you've got to deal with traffic laws and all that stuff. On a farm.
So do you think it would be, if we flip this around, do you think it would be a good idea to have kids, like let's say a 9-year-old kid out driving cars?
I don't think it would be any worse than what you have now. I wouldn't promote it, only because I don't think it's a good idea to have more cars on the road.
Yeah, well, okay.
I think, yeah, I mean, if somebody came around with a petition and said, hey, do you want to let 9-year-olds drive? I'm not signing that petition.
Okay.
However, if that law passed, I'm not going up in arms saying, why are 9-year-olds allowed to drive? I don't think it's a good idea. I think to your point of development and all that stuff, I don't think kids are there. I don't even think kids are there at 16, 15.
Exactly.
When they're allowed. And really that has a lot to do with recognition of others. Like I don't think they have empathy at that point to look at the world around them and understand. I mean, I used to do arbitration, write arguments for insurance companies whenever there were car accidents. and there was a dispute as to who was at fault. My job was to look at the police reports, look at the interviews, listen to the interviews.
Yeah.
And come up with an argument to say, okay, we weren't at fault because XYZ. A lot of the times I'd get them and I was at the intersection. I looked left, I looked right, I pulled in the intersection, the car came out of nowhere. Clearly the car didn't come out of nowhere. That car existed. But
yeah.
But so, and my point is, like, there's plenty of people that are driving that don't have that now.
Yeah.
So no, 9-year-olds shouldn't drive and all that stuff.
Okay, I'm glad we can agree on that. That's good.
But so comparing that to like the women who aren't allowed to drive.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know because I'm not in those countries and I don't know the history of where those are. I can only assume that they have those same kind of, I think that's where that's driven from, right?
I mean, I think it's hard. We're I hate to comment on it too, because I think there are cultural and religious factors that play into that. And there are a lot of places where obviously women are not considered the equal of men. And I mean, that's even in our country been the historically was the case. So I think it's, an extension of that, just thinking that, women should not be doing some of the same things that men can, or that they're not capable of doing some of the things that men can. But
so it's that capability. And then that kind of brings it to, I mean, if you take it away from the cars, because I feel like women have always been able to drive cars in the US. Maybe I'm wrong. I just remember seeing old pictures of women behind the wheel. This is not a history show. I don't know. But voting is another good example, because obviously was the suffrage movement part of the voting?
That was, was the right to vote was a big part of that.
Nice.
Yeah. And that was actually one of the things that they mentioned in there, because I think it said, I don't want to misquote it. So actually I should do the research of it and find the quote. Right now. I know. That's what I was just saying. I should look this up.
See, this is technology.
All right, let's see here. Of course, I have not used a Windows-based computer.
And this is weird because I put it on
the right. You pull
it up Edge. Microsoft Edge.
I'm a teacher and we use Apple products only.
Should be a good deal.
All right, so
women's suffrage.
I don't know what to say.
Have a flag.
Let's go to the Women's Suffrage Museum and see if we can find that. And I did spell suffrage totally wrong.
Would you like to know how to spell suffrage, audience? SUFFRA.
Suffrage, not suffrage.
Suffrage.
Let's see if I can find it.
Oh, that's how you can remember it. Suffrage.
Yeah.
I don't know what suff is though. Inequality rage.
It was interesting. One of the things that was kind of cool to see where the of course I'm not gonna be able to find it.
I like Ida B. Wells. She's a suffragist and an anti-lynching activist.
Yeah.
Two things I stand with.
Sorry, this is gonna be the really boring part. You can edit this all out.
That's right. I'm an editor pro.
All right.
Fannie Lou Hamer. I'm just reading names I see. So maybe this is a history show now.
Yeah, Seneca Falls Convention.
Now Seneca Falls makes me think of, Seneca was like a tribe, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's a lot of Native American. All right. Who organized it? Declaration of Sentiments. That sounds like what I'm looking for.
Oh, is that the one that's on the wall?
I think that would be it.
All men and women. So I see a lot of Black women, like photos of Black women on this. Was the suffrage movement a lot of Black women, or?
Well, I think it was linked to, there were a lot of abolitionists that were also part of it, especially like a lot of the men who were part of it were also abolitionists. I think when you feel like you are not being treated equally and don't have rights and you're fighting for your rights, you naturally a lot of times become an ally of other people who are.
Yeah.
And so I think they were really linked. And, you figure a lot of it started in the Northeast, where a lot of the abolitionists and stuff were also from. And I think you had a lot of people who obviously had to have some bravery to speak out about this topic, because it's not going to be necessarily well received by others. So I think that makes sense that a lot of those people would be. All right, so I'm going to look up the Declaration of Sentiments and see if I can find.
I'm going to tap into the beer nuts.
They have the entire Declaration of Sentiments. This will probably not be nearly as interesting as.
Should we get a Britannica Kids subscription?
Find the part.
Elizabeth Cady.
Why doesn't anybody actually just have the actual text?
Yes, the text. Actually, right there. Scroll down. Right underneath the picture. Read the full text here.
It's not. Why would they not make that like a live link?
Web developers looking for a job. Check out nps.gov.
Do you not have a C on your?
No. Oh, it's blacked out.
Which one is it?
The one that's blacked out.
Two of them are next to the X, or
next to the X.
That's pretty bad. That I probably should just close my eyes and done it, because I would have been able to.
Nailed it.
Yeah. No. Or is it not? Oh, of course.
And the other one's
hold on. How do you copy on here? This makes it sound like that's what I tried to do, was Control C, but it did something else.
And Control V.
Yes, Control that's the V, right? Is that it? Sorry, it sounds like I don't know how to use a computer.
No, this has been fascinating.
I swear I know how to use computers. I'm actually taking a grad class right now about digital literacy, not teaching me how to be literate, but all right. So anyway, it listed a lot of the different things that women are not being allowed to do.
Read it.
Read the entire thing?
Yeah, it's not that long.
Okay, so when in the course of human events, it becomes necessary for one portion of the family of man to assume among the people of the earth a position different from that which they have hitherto occupied, but one to which the laws of nature and the nature's God entitle them. A decent respect to the opinions of mankind requires that they should declare the causes that impel them to such a course. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men and women are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain inalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, that to secure these rights, governments are instituted, deriving their just powers from the consent of the governed. Whenever any form of government becomes destructive of these ends, it is the right of those who suffer from it to refuse allegiance to it, and to insist upon the institution of a new government, laying its foundation on such principles and organizing its powers in such form as to them shall seem most likely to affect their safety and happiness. Prudence indeed will dictate that governments long established should not be changed for light and transient causes, and accordingly all experience hath shown that mankind are more disposed to suffer, while evils are sufferable, than to right themselves by abolishing the forms to which they are accustomed. But when a long train of abuses and usurpations, pursuing invariably the same object, evinces a design to reduce them under absolute despotism, it is their duty to throw off such government and to provide new guards for their future security. Such has been the patient sufferance of the women under this government, and such is now the necessity which constrains them to demand the equal station to which they are entitled. So that's the beginning of it. The history of mankind is a history of repeated injuries and usurpations on the part of man toward women, or woman, sorry, having an indirect object the establishment of an absolute tyranny over her. To prove this, let facts be submitted to a candid world. He has never permitted her to exercise her inalienable right to the elective franchise. He has compelled her to submit to laws in the formation of which she had no voice. So your question was voting tied to that? Well, those are the first two injustices that are there. He has withheld from her rights which are given to the most ignorant and degraded men, both natives and foreigners, which we thought was sort of an interesting line to throw in there. So they're saying, most ignorant and degraded men, and then immediately put in there natives and foreigners, like,
It's kind of like the same argument that people make about aliens now.
Right.
Coming through.
Yeah. Having deprived, so anyway, that was the part that we were both kind of like, oh, that's sort of interesting. Having deprived her of this first right of a citizen, the elective franchise, thereby leaving her without representation in the halls of legislation, he has oppressed her on all sides. He has made her, if married in the eyes of the law, civilly dead. He has taken from her all right and property, even the wages she earns. He has made her morally an irresponsible being, as she can commit many crimes with impunity, provided they are done in the presence of her husband. In the covenant of marriage, she is compelled to promise obedience to her husband, he becoming, to all intents and purposes, her master, the law giving him power to deprive her of her liberty and to administer chastisement.
So
this goes on for a very long time. I don't know if you want me to read the whole thing.
I do, but I'm wondering, we can take a break for a second
to
kind of process. Where is it? Where they talk about she can commit crimes in the presence of her husband. That was a thing?
Yeah, I don't know.
That's interesting.
So we need somebody. So while we were there, it just happened to be their like yearly convention. And so they had like all these actors, historical actors, actresses playing the roles of all these people. So I could have actually asked Elizabeth Clady Stanton, who was involved in writing this. So can you explain this for me?
Elaborate.
Yeah, Harriet Tubman was there. We saw Harriet Tubman.
Ooh, how's she doing?
She was very upset when we saw her. She was. I actually missed that. I saw her from a distance. My girl sat in on her performance, or at least part of it, and I think Rowan was a little taken aback because she was very,
into it.
Yes, very into it, and was wailing and crying, and which probably for a very good reason, because she was Harriet Tubman. But
I don't know if I could. I mean, I could experience that, but I don't know if I could would enjoy being there.
Yeah,
and watching that.
Although it is kind of cool. Like I said, we do the Freedom Trail thing, and so to have people playing those roles and talking about I thought it was kind of neat.
Yeah, I mean, it's neat. I like it, and like down in Boston. I was telling Candy when we took a walk around, there's one spot where it just where I was standing, it might have been right next to the no, it wasn't next to the Bellingham, but really it's just like the old buildings, and you can just kind of look in your little spot and like, wow, this is like the same spot some really dead person stood a long time ago, and it looked pretty much like this.
Yeah,
it's kind of cool. I did not mean to take this away from the women's
suffrage. No, that's okay. So yeah, I mean, so that was a pretty interesting one. They had the one about, so the next one was about divorce. So it says, he has framed the laws of divorce as to what shall be the proper causes of divorce in case of separation, to whom the guardianship of the children shall be given, as to be wholly regardless of the happiness of women. The law in all cases going upon the false supposition of the supremacy of man and giving all power into his hands. So essentially saying that the men get to decide when somebody can be divorced, why they can be divorced, and gets to make decision on who the kids are going to be with and all of those things. So
and that kind of stuff still happens like in communities and cultures, like religious cultures mostly, which is still nuts to me.
So I mean, when you go to like your question about equality, I mean, it's a really hard question, because obviously there's so much context to that. The way women are treated in my small community of people that I know is, I would hope, pretty equal, as equal as I can hope it could be. Maybe if Andrea was here, she'd have a different opinion, but in certain areas of the United States, or Maine, in certain communities within our state, I mean, it is very different, right? And there's a lot of different things that can impact that. Cultural differences, religious differences, how you were raised, a lot of things. So it's not a simple question of,
Yeah.
are people equal? The question, I think, is, do we think people should be treated equally? And
yeah, I mean, but yeah, I mean, are people equal and should they be treated equal are two different questions, I guess.
okay.
Because if people are equal,
Mhm.
whether they should be treated equal is based on the society, right?
Mhm.
So kind of like what you were just saying, that your community group, women and men are treated equally,
Right.
to your best of your knowledge. But we absolutely know on any scale,
Right.
that women are not treated equal. Should they be treated equal? Personally, I think so.
Right.
Personally, you think so. And I think a lot of quote unquote good people would
Yeah.
think so. But I mean,
And
why do I think that is what I guess I'm asking. Like, because if I see somebody who's my age,
Mhm.
let's say we're peers, and they're doing something that I don't, let's say they're killing somebody. Let's say
let's go to extremes
yeah,
here.
let's
Okay.
go say, okay, let's take it down 2 notches. They're littering.
Okay.
All right.
I like
That's
how
more than
littering's two notches from murder.
They're big notches.
It's like you've seen somebody throw something on the ground and you're like, whoa, you better pick that up. Today you're littering, tomorrow you're gonna be killing somebody. Like littering is a gateway to murder, clearly.
I'm surprised that did not come up in our school. Littering's a gateway to murder. But if I see somebody littering, my first impression is that I am better than that person.
You judge that person, absolutely.
I judge myself. I judge myself as being better than that person.
Right.
Should I treat that person equally, and what is equally at that point? Like, sure, they get the right to vote. I don't have any judgment on that, right? I don't have anything to say about that.
Yeah.
I mean, what is treating equally at that point? As I would treat you? I don't know.
Well, I don't think treating equally, number one, means that you have to be nice or kind or friends with every single person you meet, right?
Okay.
I think that, and certainly there are, if you want to take it from a legal standpoint or not, there are certain rights and responsibilities that people, you need to hold up your end of the bargain in order to earn those things, right? So if we're talking about, I'm taking a class right now, and we are actually talking about rights that have to do with digital use of digital tools with kids, like using a laptop to browse the internet, to blog, to whatever it is. And one of the things we're reading was mentioning how kids have a right to use technology for learning. And so
through your school,
just kids have a right to technology for learning was basically their thing, that kids have this right. And so that was kind of our discussion point. And we're saying, well, kids should have the right to do that, but with those rights come some responsibilities. And so if kids are using it to send inappropriate pictures to people, other classmates, then they're going to have some of those rights curtailed, and they're not going to be treated equally in that. They're not going to have the equal access to it, or they're not, they're going to have some limitations put on that. And so I think, obviously with littering, we're not saying that person's going to be, kicked out of society. You can't hold this job, or you can't go to these places, you can no longer go here because you threw trash. You can no longer go to Sebago Lake State Park because I saw you put trash there for the rest of your life. We're not going to go to those extremes, but I do think that in general, if you're not holding up to some of those responsibilities, or holding your end of the bargain, then sometimes you are going to treat somebody differently because of that.
Sure. So there's a consequence to your action.
Exactly.
And
right.
And that's a social contract, one way or the other.
Exactly. Whether it's a legal social contract or just or just kind of like a social one, like you're saying.
And that's where it gets kind of tricky, I think, because when the legal social contract, I mean, that's suffrage. That's a prime example.
Right.
Like activist, black rights and all that stuff.
Right.
Those were laws in place that literally said you can't vote, you're worth 1/3 of a person,
Right.
all that stuff.
Right.
And then when it comes down into like that social stuff, and we're talking about the litterer, and like if I walk by and don't say hi to that person,
Right.
let's say, because I don't like that person
Mhm.
because of what they've done, and that's not that my hi is like, going to be the greatest thing anybody receives, but versus my interaction with you, if I walk
Right.
down the street, I say hi.
Right.
At least.
Mhm.
Is that inappropriate inequality, quote unquote?
I think that's fine. And I think that the other big difference is that, like you said, there are consequences to your actions. The things you do, the way you act has consequences, and that changes how people are going to treat you. But when we talk about men versus women, black versus white, those are not choices somebody's making. Those are things that are, like you said, biological differences or things people aren't changing. So if I'm walking down the street and you say hello to me and I choose not to say hi back because you're black, that's very different than if we're walking down the street and you say hi to me and I choose not to say hi back because, I don't know, I saw you jaywalking and I hate jaywalk. Those are not that jaywalking.
Well,
but or I saw you litter and I'm kind of pissed off that you littered, or you let your dog use go to the bathroom on somebody's lawn and didn't pick it up. I'm going to judge you for that too. And yeah, I'll be kind of annoyed with you and I might want to say hi. But if I made that decision just based on your race or because you're a woman, whatever, that's not something that's, within your control. Those are different things.
Right. So if I were to walk down, and if you were to walk by and see somebody dressed as a Nazi, like you would have that different reaction. You wouldn't be kind to them.
I would not be kind to the white supremacist walking down the street.
But I'm glad the assumption.
Yes, that is correct. But that's something that somebody's choosing to. Most cases are going to be, they're making that choice to have those views, to display those. So I think that's a different situation. So I think people are judged based on their character and their actions versus whether they're a man or a woman or the color of their skin or I think religion is another one that's a little bit sticky because some people could say, well, they're choosing to be a certain, but I think religious beliefs are another thing that shouldn't, for the most part, be something that people are judged on as well. So
right, nothing to separate or cause inequality, like treat somebody
I think
differently.
that's a bit of a different situation. And then that's why you bring up things like sexuality, where some people don't believe that sexuality is a choice, and or they believe it is a choice and it is your actions that they're judging, versus other people who feel, well, but no, that's that's just who somebody is, and it's it's a natural thing, kind of, and don't judge.
Right.
People shouldn't have their rights infringed on because they're gay or whatever. So I think that's a place where you kind of get, for some people, that can be a bit of a sticky point. I remember a number of years ago in Maine, they were trying to add homosexuality to the anti-discrimination laws. And so I remember having that conversation. We were back in college and having that conversation with some people who I think are really great people, but we're saying, I don't think if I have an apartment, I should have to rent to somebody, and having that conversation. Well, no, they're choosing to be gay, and that, and I don't have that belief. So to me, it was, well, no, that you treat them equally. But,
so it sounds like, perception plays a huge role in judging, obviously, and whatever. And so I think that perception of women and their capabilities, like that's where that voting thing came from. Like the men on that side have a perception, and it seems like it with the laws that were in place or not in place, however it was, where a man has full control of the women, essentially,
and that women weren't weren't equal to men, so they didn't deserve equal rights, is essentially what I think they were saying. And obviously they also gave the men the control and the power, and that's part of it too.
But so I wonder, so from your knowledge of the history, that
which is very minimal, by the way. We are not experts on this topic. I think we need to make that very, very clear.
You know what I think I did? I mixed up when you were talking about teaching Ellis Island and the suffrage movement. I was like, oh yeah, he teaches the suffrage movement in my head in this moment right here.
Yes.
So I just wonder what those, I mean, we can look it up too. Those direct responses were from the opposition, because as we talk about this, it seems silly, obviously. Or silly is a horrible word to use, but it's ridiculous to have the belief system that was in place that had those laws, because women are clearly as capable as men to do anything as a human. So I would just wonder who's standing up against that, and like what are their arguing points, like
right. But it was fun. I mean, you would see all these buttons and leaflets and stuff that were all about, like, you know, not giving women the right to vote. And a lot of them were like, you'd see women wearing things that were saying, like, you know, I don't know exactly what they said, but they're anti-suffrage things. It was just kind of, you know, interesting to see that and be like, okay, so there were women who didn't want those same rights. So that was, it was interesting. But yeah, it is hard to imagine how there was, you know, how that came about. But of course, we're talking from a male perspective on this.
Yeah, well, I mean, a male perspective, and it's also like, how many years later? When was the suffrage movement?
Oh, I don't even.
So you got that much history of knowledge, at least. Common sense.
Yeah.
That was not common sense then.
Yeah.
So where are we at? He has made her morally irresponsible. Oh, we passed that. That's when we went back to it.
Yeah. Let's see. After depriving her of all rights as a married woman, if single and the owner of property, he has taxed her to support a government which recognizes her only when her property can be made profitable to it. He has monopolized nearly all the profitable employments, and from those she is permitted to follow, she receives but a scanty remuneration. He closes against her all the avenues to wealth and distinction, which he considers most honorable to himself. As a teacher of theology, medicine, of law, she is not known. He has denied her the facilities of obtaining a thorough education, all colleges being closed against her. So, keeping her from being educated and having the same jobs as others, and that sort of thing. And again, you can see exactly why this movement and the abolitionist movement were so hand in hand, because all of these same things, it's almost like you could copy and paste for how people are treated because of their race and things like that, you know, in the so yeah, you can see why those go together. I need to bring my reading glasses the next time I come over. He allows her in church as well as state, but a subordinate position, claiming apostolic authority for her exclusion from the ministry, and with some exceptions from any public participation in the affairs of the church. He has created a false public sentiment by giving to the world a different code of morals for men and women, by which moral delinquencies which exclude women from society are not only tolerated, but deemed of little account in man. I think that's probably something that's changed somewhat today, but is often probably still true. I think we treat women differently a lot of times, or I shouldn't say we, but like society can treat women differently for things like that. Like if you look at Monica Lewinsky, for example, she was treated certainly very differently at that time than others. He has usurped the prerogative of Jehovah himself, claiming it is his right to assign for her a sphere of action when that belongs to her conscience and her God. He has endeavored in every way that he could be to destroy her confidence in her own powers, to lessen her self-respect, and to make her willing to lead a dependent and abject life. Now, in view of this entire disenfranchisement of one half the people of this country, their social and religious degradation, in view of the unjust laws above mentioned, and because women do feel themselves aggrieved, oppressed, and fraudulently deprived of their most sacred rights, we insist that they have immediate admission to all the rights and privileges which belong to them as citizens of these United States. In entering upon the great work before us, we anticipate no small amount of misconception, misrepresentation, ridicule, but we shall use every instrumentality within our power to effect our object. We shall employ agents, circulate tracts, petition the state and national legislatures, and endeavor to enlist the pulpit and the press in our behalf. We hope this convention will be followed by a series of conventions embracing every part of the country. Firmly relying upon the final triumph of the right and the true, we do this day affix our signatures to this declaration. And then they all signed. And there was, I can't remember how many men signed it. See if they have them. Oh yeah, so there's a bunch of men that signed.
There's a second section, all men.
Yeah, so this was the names of the gentlemen who were in there and signed it. Let's see.
Yeah,
Frederick Douglass was there. So that's pretty cool. Definitely recommend people going there. Now, as I'm reading this, I think would be interesting. So this is obviously our perspective. We don't have any women here. We needed like Candy or Andrea here to kind of jump in on this conversation, but
we'll have a part 2.
Right. Yeah. So
yeah, it's really cool. I like seeing those documents, like the old ones.
Yeah.
And, like where the star was. Like I said, I've heard of the suffrage movement, and I don't think I learned much about it at all.
Right. I mean, what I know essentially is that there was a suffrage movement and that women fought for the right to vote and for equal rights, but that's about where it ends.
Right.
Now I know a little bit more having gone to the museum. I am interested. One thing I should have paid attention to is how long it took after this convention for like women to be granted the right to vote. Obviously, rights for women have been sort of drip, 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 drip. I mean, we're still, all the studies that show the pay of women for the same job is still below the average pay for men. And, there's a lot of those things where, I think we're still catching up, but like, it would have been interesting to see kind of what that timeline was. And I didn't.
How do you feel about I mean, I don't need to justify my stance on women's rights. So, right, how do you feel about when there are the studies that do the pay on women's rights, and then you hear both sides of it? Like there's the typical side of there's the disparity, and then there's we'll work with the numbers, and then if you look at it this way, then they're actually equal. Like, how do you feel about those types of?
I don't know, and I don't know probably enough about it to make a qualified response. And one thing that's hard for me is, again, a lot of it comes down to context. Mm-hmm. So I live in Portland, Maine, which is a fairly liberal community. I work at an elementary school, which for the majority of my career has been mostly women with a few men sprinkled in. Now, I mean, this is a year we have in my 4th grade the same number of male teachers as we do female teachers. Like the number of male teachers at that level has been growing, but I've been surrounded by women.
Right.
And so and we all get paid according to a pay scale. So it's, if I've been teaching for 20 years and you've been teaching for 20 years, we're going to get the exact same thing because that's what our contract says. So I think I'm very removed from the business world or something where, salaries might not be equal for people. So I don't know. I don't feel like I'm necessarily qualified to speak on that in very much depth. But
well, just from I mean, that might be an even better perspective though from that outside, because all you're really able to do is trust whatever somebody else is saying. Right. So if somebody says to you, well, this data says that women are not paid as much as men, but somebody else says, well, this data says that they are paid as much as men. From your perspective, it sounds like you're erring on the side of the women are paid less. Yeah, you're erring on that side because I don't want to use that. Like
well, to be honest, I'm probably more sympathetic to that argument. I think that in general, probably women aren't treated as equally and as well. And there's been a long history of that. So I tend to err on that side, but you're right. I don't probably know enough to really have an informed judgment on it. But yes, I tend to believe that, but that's also probably because I'm sympathetic to that side.
I'm the same way. I don't want this to come off as like I'm putting you on the spot.
Yeah, no,
I'm the same way. Like I'm a data oriented person anyway, so I'm always interested in that stuff. So when I first started hearing those numbers of like, well, if you look at it this way and that, I was like, well, yeah, you're absolutely right. If you break it down that way, but I've always been one to say you can break down data anyway.
Right, and make it say whatever you want it to
Yeah.
say. Absolutely.
Which is why I'm kind of like, well, why do we even use that argument at
Right.
that point? Because I'm not I've worked in like jobs, private companies all my life, all my career, and I've worked with really strong women,
Mhm.
women who've been my bosses
Oh yeah.
all
Yeah.
the way through.
Yeah.
I've worked alongside of them, and they have been just as good or bad as my
Right.
male counterparts.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah.
And I know that there's pay differences that go along, but most of the females that I worked with got paid more than I got paid.
Mhm.
And that really typically had to do with just time there and stuff. So
Yeah.
I can't use that as a thing. But as you're young and you're growing up and you're like trying to piece things together, people are saying women make more or women make less than men. And like, no, they're all making more than me. It's hard to like kind of.
Well, and again, so that's your context. That's
Right,
what you,
yeah.
yeah. So that it's hard to say. I mean, but I also think it's pretty believable that whether it's pay or other ways, that in general, there are a lot of situations in jobs where women are treated differently than
Yeah.
men. And, whether it has to do with sexual harassment or pay or,
And really, I think that's the stuff that's outside of the pay. That's more
Yeah.
important stuff to me. I mean,
oh, right.
the pay will come.
Yeah.
I think so. And that's just to say, don't lead with that argument. If when those arguments are going out, I hear that as a lead, and it's like there's more things. Like when you talk about the way people are treated, like
Yeah.
sexual harassment, for example. I mean, that happens for men and women, but I think even worse than that. That's weird to say, but like another bad thing is just that lack of respect. Like
Yeah.
I don't know if you see it much in the school where you've got a primarily all women, and I don't know how many Zoom calls you do or meetings you
Yeah.
do, but I've seen many times in places I've worked before where women are on the call and men are on the call, and women will chime in with something and kind of not get shut down, but you can certainly sense the vibe there.
Yeah.
And then I've certainly heard stories of the woman says something, and
Yeah.
then immediately after the man says something, and then, hey Bob,
Yeah.
thanks for that idea.
Where we see it a lot in schools are from parents,
Mhm.
where they assume, they'll say, oh, I want my child to have a male teacher.
Okay.
Or I want, and they'll say they need somebody, I want them to have a male teacher. They need somebody that's going to be like a strong disciplinarian or something like that. And every time I always laugh because I'm like, all right, if you want a strong disciplinarian, you want Mrs. So-and-so down the hall. You do not want me. Like we're joking, like my class management is nowhere near her class
Right.
management. You know what I mean? Or so I think they assume because of our gender that we're going to be a certain way.
Mhm.
And so that's where we see it a lot. And I think, so that's where it really, really comes out. I think as professionally, I would say I don't see a big difference as a whole. Now, that's not to say that I haven't had, an administrator or somebody that may treat women or men differently. Like that has happened and does happen. But I think as a whole, professionally, we're treated pretty equally. And then the other thing that's hilarious is when it comes time to get like teacher gifts, I always get like, little flower decorations. They're like, with hearts that say like world's best teacher or something like that. Or like our PTO, and I absolutely love our PTO. They're awesome. They do a ton to support us and everything, but like they do a big raffle for Teacher Appreciation Week. And so like this year I won the one in a melon raffle, and it was like watermelon scented candles and a watermelon mask, that face mask, and like nail polish and stuff, which is not to say that there are men that would not appreciate that, but a lot of those things tend to be very like women focused, traditionally women focused kind of thing. So that's kind of funny too, but that's more in like a haha kind of way.
I did notice your nails though.
Oh,
right now.
so today was a very special day. I had a spa day. I had, let's see, what spa treatments did I get? We're going on a totally different tangent here, but I had a manicure and a pedicure. I had a mud mask. I had a haircut and a back massage and a nice cold towel treatment. And yeah, this is all by my 9-year-old daughter.
Okay.
Andrea had a migraine today and was laying down, and so I was trying to keep my daughter occupied for as long as I could, and I didn't want to take her anywhere because it looked like we were going to get big thunderstorms this afternoon, which never really, at least in my area, materialized. But she's deathly afraid of thunderstorms, and so I didn't want to go out anywhere and be stuck with one. So we're like, okay, what can we do in the house? So we did a spa treatment day, and it got a little weird at times. She really wanted to. She came down with a razor and shaving cream and wanted to shave my back hair. And then wanted to wax it. And so I did not let her do either one. Although she did use like masking tape to try to take off.
How'd that work?
It did hurt. So I think it must have taken off something, maybe some skin. And at one point we settled on was my electric razor, and she trimmed my ear hair.
Yeah, well.
One of the things of getting old is I'm getting lots of hair in places I don't want it, and losing the hair that I do want. So
I keep pretending that the little hairs that I pluck out of my ear is like, oh no, it's just that last one.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah. So so it was a little weird. Maddie kept walking the room and then saying, why do I live in such a weird family? And then walking back out into her bedroom. But yeah, it was fine. It killed like an hour and a half, and all I had to do was lay there in front of a fan, and
I love how Andrea had the migraine and yet you got the spa treatment.
Yeah, the spa treatment. Yeah. I actually we're trying to do like my daughter Maddie Daddy, and then Rowan Daddy Day, where and then Andrea will take them out and do something too. So like we have one-on-one time, and we let them pick an activity. So I keep trying to tell them, wouldn't it be funny to do like a spa day with your dad, or we just go and we get spa treatment? That sounds great. So
you broke in there.
Yeah, exactly. So, but I don't know. She keeps being like, we're gonna go bowling. Like, all right, bowling's fun too, but.
So are there any places around here that are bowling spa?
Yeah,
places? That'd be kind of cool, actually. You sit down at the beginning of the lane, you put your feet in like the little spa thing, and it had to be candlepin bowling, I think, because like the big balls are gonna hurt. Yeah.
Andrew and I always talked about starting a bar that had the Bachelorette on one side, and then was like a sports bar on the other one, like, I don't know.
Like a split down the middle theme?
Yeah, maybe, or something. I don't know.
That wouldn't be bad. Well, how would a Bachelorette bar be?
I don't know. Like the show, The Bachelorette.
I never watched the show.
Well, I don't watch the show either, but like a show, to kind of go to, I don't know.
So would it be the competition going on, or just look?
No, you just have it on TV, and then people would drink lots of wine while watching it, and then people that didn't want to watch it could go watch the sports in the sports
This
bar.
makes much more sense to me.
Okay.
I was thinking that your decor was half Bachelorette.
No.
Half.
So maybe I'd say reality shows on one side, not necessarily. Although the decor could kind of match. It could be like comfy couches and stuff on one side, and then it's
Survivor on another section where it's all jungle themed.
Yeah, or yeah.
No, I like that. The idea of putting the different shows on the different things to get all the audience.
That came out of because Andrea used to have all her friends over to watch The Bachelorette or The Bachelor, whichever one happened to be on, and they would drink wine. They don't do that anymore, but I think because
that might be kind of cool. A bar that shows Bachelorette episodes on one side and Bachelor episodes on the other side. And then you got like the guys and the girls that are watching it and all grouped up and are single, and you mingle in the middle.
Yeah. I don't really know how it would do, but
no, I mean, it might not do well at all.
Yes,
Probably wouldn't do well at all. That's why I don't own a bar.
Yeah. There is an abandoned redemption center right across the street from our house. So if you have any good ideas for a business.
A redemption center.
I guess it's a great idea.
I think it did pretty well as a redemption center.
Or maybe not. Maybe that's why it's an abandoned.
It was there forever, though. They weren't clean at all.
I never went to that.
I used to deliver beer, and part of the delivery job was picking up returnables from
Oh,
redemption
really?
centers. Yeah.
I didn't realize that was part of it.
Yeah. So all the redemption centers you see, the trucks will go or the beer trucks will typically go and load up empty cans at the end of the day. So,
Yeah.
and they'll pay however much it is
Yeah.
per, and I think it's a little bit more. There's got to be some
Yeah.
way of getting more money
Yeah.
out of it, but yeah, and then they cut him a check and drive on off.
I mean, that makes a lot of sense. And then that way, the bars and stuff don't have to.
Yeah, well, you collect them from bars too.
Yeah.
Like, so that would be, it would be interesting because you'd be going to places, you'd hit the redemption centers at the end of the day because your truck's empty. You've already,
so you'd fill up from the redemption centers you're filling up? Okay, sorry.
Right.
I thought you were saying you're bringing them to the redemption centers.
No,
So you'd
no.
fill up at the redemption centers.
Yeah,
Gotcha.
you pull, and then you'd also get empties from the bars and stuff that you went to.
Yeah.
Which was interesting because if you like hit a bar at the beginning of the day
Yeah.
where your truck's full and they have a bunch of empties and you have no room to put it on the truck, you have to like go back or figure something out.
Yeah. I bet the empties were a lot easier to move around than the full things of beer.
Yes, but a lot grosser to move around.
That is true. That is true.
And especially at that redemption center that's across from your place. That's what made me think of it. It's just disgusting to go in there every time. You go in and you like smell all the, versus the places that were clean and the bags were clean and stuff. And it was, I don't know what they did, but they did it better.
So we should brainstorm other business ideas that we could do in the redemption center besides redemption. There's also, if you want something bigger, there's the Rite Aid that's been abandoned for about 20 years right next to me too.
I think somebody bought it.
It looks like they're doing something there, right? They don't have the lease sign. They've been like cleaning up the outside. They've been doing something inside.
Yeah, I saw the dumpster. I got really excited.
I hope it becomes something.
That'd be cool for like a trampoline park or something.
As long as it's not like a dollar store.
We need more.
I don't want more dollar stores or I was surprised like the redemption center didn't turn into like a weed business or something.
Give it time.
We have they're everywhere. So
yeah, I'm wondering if they're out of space. Like they probably couldn't build one there. And Breakwater School's right there too, right?
Yeah. So maybe they don't want a dispensary across the street from.
Yeah.
They do have an ice cream place they're putting in across the street from Breakwater.
Yes.
So I don't know should that be allowed?
And that's kind of like drugs, right? Did you ever
childhood obesity is not a laughing matter. So
did you ever do outdoor track?
No.
So an outdoor track and during cross country.
I barely did indoor track.
I do remember you doing indoor track though, which is why I asked.
Yeah.
We used to go to Thornton Academy and over there. Did you ever play soccer in that area?
Oh yeah.
So I remember
currently work like a minute from Thornton Academy.
Yeah. So the smells of all the restaurants, the KFC and all that stuff as a high school kid when you're on the track meet, it's just like, oh my God.
Yeah. There's all those places right there. Although a lot of them are going out of business, but yes, they are. The Pizza Hut closed down there.
Pizza Hut closed?
The one down there,
But they're dying out. I really liked Pizza
Hut.
Yeah.
I wonder why Pizza Hut's dying out.
They still have the Book It program, but nobody does it.
Yeah, nobody does book it anymore. I think I did it like 1 year, 2 years maybe.
Why did you not?
Yeah, Book It back in the day was awesome.
Yeah.
Like I earned so many pan pizzas from.
Do you think you could start a community Book It? Like, could you just be like, I'm not part of a school, but my school does not do Book It well, so I'd like to promote Book It.
You could definitely do it.
Just to show Book It.
I used to love. So my parents hated pizza. We'd never get pizza from Pizza Hut. Like parents are kind of like pizza snobs. They only go to like one place. Not that it's like a fancy
Little
place,
Caesars.
but like not Little Caesars. But Jared's family used to do Pizza Hut, and so I would always get super excited when I was sleeping over his house and they were doing pizza because it was the only time I get to have Pizza Hut, and it was so good. Nowadays we don't need Pizza Hut.
No, I got Papa John's was like my spot, and really only because the pepper that they give you, I just really like it, and they give you garlic butter for free.
Yeah,
but they don't have one down here that delivers close by. But when I went up to Orono the other weekend, They have a Papa John's like right
So you
up
went up
there.
to Orono and you had Papa John's, not like Pat's.
No,
No
not Papa
Pizza
John's.
Dome. You should have gone back in the Pizza Dome then. Like,
They're closed.
hey, do you remember me?
Story time.
What if the person did remember you? And no.
If you've ever been up to Orono and you heard about a person who was an immigrant and couldn't speak much English and hit the owner of Pizza Dome with his car after stealing money, that was me.
Yeah.
Uh,
Just a minute, you really did steal all the money, right?
yeah, it's all $50 I made in tips, something like that.
Yeah. Oh, that was a funny story.
That tip money was mine.
So,
well, it's we can wrap it up or take a break or whatever. I don't know how much time you got, but
whatever. I think if we're gonna wrap up either totally or just take a break, I think we need to end by reminding everyone that we recognize that we are not experts on the women's suffrage movement. So again, do not tune in to listen to us for history lessons. We are not experts. And number two, we also recognize that we're just two dudes talking about honestly about these issues. And we realize that, maybe we need to do a follow-up where we have some women join us and have this conversation, but
definitely
that might be an interesting one to bring back. But
yeah, for sure. And I would just even expand on that to say, I'm not an expert in much.
Yes. Anything.
If we
really.
talk Microsoft Excel, if we talk general fitness, very general, nothing too specific, very general fitness, and walking with a good posture. I'm pretty good at those things. I would consider myself expert, but otherwise you can just assume that
I have to do some thinking about what I would consider myself an expert at. I'm not sure right now I can think of anything off the top of my head.
let's see. Well, English.
Oh, I'm definitely not an expert there.
Well,
I feel like I faked my way to a degree in English.
Comparatively speaking, though, I think you would be considered an expert.
I don't know.
I'm not saying if we were to get Allen Ginsberg and you in a conversation, I would.
Or if I was going to sit down with like a Harvard professor and talk literature or something like that, I'd be able to hold my end.
I mean, maybe you could, because really it's just critical analysis.
Yeah. As long as I can defend it. And that's what I tell my kids, right, at school. I don't care what your idea is, what your interpretation or what you think the main, as long as you can defend that argument with something that makes sense and uses evidence, then hey. So
I wrote my final paper for an English class. I think it was my sophomore year in college or whatever it was. It had to be my freshman year. But anyway, I forgot all about it or didn't care about it until the day of, and we had to do just a essay to find something and argue it. And so on my way to the class, I was thinking, oh crap, what am I gonna write? And so I wrote this whole thing on how we should eradicate homeless people and defended it and had the plan for doing it. And it was a fairly reasonable approach. I did not believe it at all. It just turned into a creative experiment for me, but I got an A.
That's one of those things though, like where you kind of look back on it and you're like, probably shouldn't have. Like I get the whole like there's this point to it, like can I make an argument for it, and making an argument for the sake of making an argument or just to prove that you can make an argument for anything is kind of cool. But at the same time, it's sort of like if I was a more, with some maturity, maybe that's not something I would have.
But where's the maturity level in there? Because it's not like in this situation, it's not like it was a situation where there was consequence to it.
Right.
This English teacher was just going through some papers and making sure that the construct was there. If I were to go to a debate and be able to choose my thing, I don't. Only because the arguments I made were pretty weak anyway.
Yeah. If I'm being honest.
Yeah.
You got an A.
I did get an A.
Yeah.
And maybe that was just compared to the other papers. I mean, that stands out for sure. Psychological experiment.
So when we graduated, I was third in our class and I had to write an essay or make a speech at our graduation.
What's the third called?
honor essayist.
Okay.
So I had to write a speech, and then my girlfriend at the time was a valedictorian, and so she also had to make a speech, and so we were running short on time for writing speeches, and she was having a bit of a tough time. So I ended up writing a good majority of her speech, maybe the whole thing, which she might deny if she were to somehow listen to this. But anyway, so I wrote her speech, and it was about this poem, and it was about this guy who is, I can't even remember the poem now, but I remember like he's lustily dipping his oars into the water, and he's like trying to get somewhere, like he's in a boat and he's taking this journey and he's trying to reach this destination. And so I wrote this whole essay for her the speech for her that she gave, and it was all about like reaching for your goals and achieving your goals and working hard. And then as soon as we got done, I'm like, I'm pretty sure that's actually about like sex and having an orgasm. Like, and so I explained this whole interpretation to her about it, and she was so pissed. But I really think it like definitely could have been about that.
I'm gonna have to look up.
Yeah, I gotta find what the poem was, but
that's hilarious.
Yeah, so yeah, as long as you can support it, you can do any interpretation you want.
Yeah, the scandal in Westbrook.
Yeah. I'm sure if you went online, and you could find some pretty interesting interpretations of.
That's fun to do. Like any of those. We in high school, I was over at Jeremy's house one night, and we were listening to the Cake CD, Fashion Nugget.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
And we were just analyzing every song. Every song we listened to, we broke down the lyrics and came up with our own interpretations, and they were obviously whatever.
I know one of the things I love to do. So I generally, I feel like I say this to you every single time. I try to avoid social media as much as I can. Of course, every time I say that, I'm like, but then I saw on your Facebook that you were doing whatever. So maybe I'm not as successful about avoiding it as I think I am. But I do go on Reddit, because there's some different subreddits on there that I really like to look at. And so one of them that I haven't joined, but it sometimes pops up, are the fan theories on things.
Oh, yeah.
And I always love those, because it's the exact same thing. Like they take something and then come up with a theory on it and support it with all this evidence. And a lot of times I read them like, oh yeah, that makes perfect sense. And I think you're right on. And then other times it's just like way the hell out there. And it's pretty entertaining to see how somebody tries to justify it. But I could totally see you having a good time doing something like that and being like, I think this, and just kind of come up with a bullshit argument just to do it.
It's a good time. I had written a whole essay on Kaitsukai, made up martial art, for my advanced phys ed class. Came up with a bibliography and everything.
Yeah,
that's good times. You were talking about the fan theories and stuff. I just seen somebody posted a screenshot on Facebook of have you watched Stranger Things?
Yes.
So
is this a spoiler? Do you have to give like a spoiler?
I'm not. I can do this without giving a spoiler. Okay. In a scene where somebody, where they're fighting something in the prison.
You just gave away that they fight something in Stranger Things.
Yes, I did do that, but everybody knew that was coming if they've been watching. But anyway, there's a like close up of a still of a sword that's there, and someone had mentioned like the Conan sword. It's the sword from the Conan the Barbarian, and as people were asking, well, where did that come from? And I was thinking about it. I was like, oh, it's kind of cool if you think about it. The Conan universe like took place long time ago, and then the Russians, you can imagine like the Russians were trying to find occult things, kind of like the Nazis did for a little while, and during World War II, and it's up in Siberia, so maybe like that prison was actually originally like a stronghold for the stuff that they found, the treasures and stuff, because it's in the middle of nowhere. And then once that program ended, they cleared everything out, turned it into a prison, and they just found those weapons that were laying around, and not a whole lot of bit through it. And then I was thinking about, well, it's kind of like in Hellboy, where the Russians were doing that thing. I was like, oh, you could have like a Hellboy Stranger Things crossover. Like you've got the search for the treasure and all that, and then you end up in Stranger Things world, and but then you have David Harbour, who's in Hellboy, like the new
Oh,
Hellboy,
yeah,
and
yeah.
he's in Stranger Things too. So what role does
I'll
he
tell
play?
you, if Hellboy shows up in season 5, I'll be pretty impressed that you.
Called it.
I've been reading some stuff about like just the D&D background that I don't know about, but then I read it, I'm like, oh, that you can see how that all fits and how it was all influenced it. That like the certain monsters and what's the canon for those monsters in the D&D world, which then it's like, oh, okay, so that again, I won't say go too far into that because I don't want to give anything away. And then one of the theories I saw, which is kind of interesting, is that this whole thing is actually just a D&D quest that they're doing, and that it's all like fantasy.
I'm gonna be so pissed
if that's what it is. I know, that's what everyone was saying. If that's all it is, that's gonna really suck. But it was that they had made up, somebody was the dungeon master and made up their whole story about them that takes place in their town where they're the ones.
Come to find out, the dungeon master is Mike's dad.
Yeah. Who might be one of my favorite characters in the show. I really appreciate him.
If as little as he shows up,
he's always great.
Gems. She does this to me all the time. That whole idea of the D&D war and stuff. It's kind of crazy because like I've played D&D on and off over the years, and like right now I'm part of a longer campaign, and it's kind of cool to like talk to people who have played D&D and who are really into it and have all the games, played all of them, and to hear about that lore that's there, because they'll talk about characters like, oh yeah, everybody's supposed to know, and if I knew, like I would, but it's and they'll explain it, and you're like, oh yeah, so and so, he's like the greatest fighter and blah blah blah. I was like, oh cool.
Well, I definitely felt like as I was reading some of the stuff that I was missing out on this whole layer of the show that all these big D&D fans are totally getting, and they're like seeing all these connections and stuff, and I'm like totally missing it. So I was kind of jealous actually of that. Like, I wish I had this background knowledge. It would make it so much more interesting.
It is fun when you have that. Like I find that with Marvel shows. Like I've been a big Marvel nerd growing up, and not so much now with like the newer stuff because it's less stuff that I was ever interested in. But with the older stuff, knowing some of the Easter eggs before everybody's like, oh yeah, did you see this, that? And I was like, yeah, I got it.
The closest thing for that for me is the Wheel of Time series, which did you watch any? Have you heard? I probably told you about it.
Yeah, we didn't get through all of it.
So a lot of people that are fans of the Wheel of Time would probably tell you they hate the TV show, but like it was cool to be able to watch it and be like, oh, I know, I know the whole backstory on this that was left out of the thing. I guess Game of Thrones is the same thing because I'd read all those books prior to the series coming out, so that was kind of similar too, where I knew a lot of the stuff that was different in the books or was left out, but
that's a nice thing about having that second thing. Like you say, it's fun.
That's a whole nother.
And then when you talk to other people, there's either they know what you're talking about or they don't, and then
or they get really annoyed because you're like, oh, let me explain this to you, and then they're like, stop hitting pause and explaining things. This is my experience with my wife. So the greatest thing was, so she watched, I think, season 1 of Game of Thrones, didn't watch any of the other seasons, and then wanted to join in for the last season again. And so I convinced her to let me like give her a synopsis of like all of Game of Thrones. And she's like, all right, you've got 5 minutes. And I think it took me like 45 minutes because I got so into it. And I was telling her the whole, and she just sat there, and she would tell you it was probably the worst 45 minutes of her life, but
that's awesome.
I really enjoyed it. It was great.
I wish I could give a synopsis of 45 minutes.
Being concise is not a strength of mine.
That's hard to do with Game of Thrones anyway, though.
Well, right. Well, and again, I was going like, well, and that was different because in the books, this is, and so I was really I probably couldn't do that now because I'm so far removed from having watched it or read those, but and the books have a lot of like they go a lot of different directions and places, and then they have like little side stories that never come to anything, and it's sort of like so
All right, I had an idea for the beginning of the show, but I think this is a good ender for the show.
Okay.
All right. We both have whiteboards here, and I didn't know what we would ever use these whiteboards
Are we gonna
for.
play the newlywed game?
We could do that, but no. I don't remember how the newlywed
Can-
games works.
Can we do one where we come in and play the newlywed game with our wife? I don't think your wife would come on. I don't know if
Yeah.
mine would either. Mine probably would.
I'll see if Dominic would come in and
You get Dominic, I'll get Maddie. And then no, she wouldn't do it with me because she would be too embarrassed.
All right, we'll do a haiku. You know how to write a haiku. We'll do the 575.
575 is the syllables.
Yeah. All right.
And is there a topic or
Whatever you want. Whatever you're feeling. You know, we just spent
Oh.
an hour and a half together talking about all kinds of stuff and whatever else is there.
this might not be quick.
That's fine.
You probably wrote your haiku like
No, I didn't.
yesterday. Now you're like, let me make this up off the top of my head. Let's see, I did actually wrote a lot of haikus with my kids this year.
We're both
Counting our fingers. I don't know if I spelled that correctly. Hold on, I'm not done yet.
Okay. So, and then what we'll do when you're done, no rush, we'll read each other's. So you'll read mine, I'll read yours. I'll be right back. All right.
This is like texting my dad.
Tell him I said hi.
My mom was walking and fell the other day,
Ooh.
and so like her whole leg is like swollen from like here all the way down to her ankle, and like the deepest purple I've ever seen.
Wow.
So she like can't move, and so they gotta have the swelling go down. They shouldn't break anything, but they need the swelling to go down so they can like see if she tore something in her knee. But like it's crazy. So anyway, just texting about that.
Sure.
But
That's rough.
all right, so we're exchanging.
We're exchanging.
Okay.
All right. Who goes first?
Doesn't matter to me.
And let's flip a coin for it.
Okay.
I don't have a coin. We'll spin a queen for it. See if it spins. Me.
All right.
All right. Is there a name? Or no name?
Oh, I did not name it.
I didn't name mine either. I was just wondering.
Yes.
It's gonna be
I'll have to come up with a name.
a haiku by Patrick Conley. The water vibrates. Beware the mighty T-Rex. Goldblum is the man. So I like it. It's just little Jurassic Park action.
It is. I noticed the glass of water there. That was my inspiration. As I was looking at what should I write about, I noticed the glass of water.
That's awesome. That's it. So to the listening audience and to the visual audience, because you can't see the cup, there's a glass of water off to the side, which looks very much like the Jurassic Park.
Right. That's like that. Now that's a memorable scene in that, you know, when you think Jurassic Park, one of the things you think of is the vibrating glass of water, right?
And all of these things are fact. Goldblum is the man.
He is pretty cool.
That's awesome. I like it.
All right. And Andres, so mine is clearly not on topic. Andres is beer nuts and suffrage, signs of masculinity, Pat and Dre, real men.
Yeah. I think yours was on topic as well, because like you said, it's in the room.
I thought about doing one based on what we did, but then I saw the water, and I have been thinking very much about how Jeff Goldblum is the man and needs more recognition. Oh, I think everybody loves Jeff Goldblum. I don't know.
Yeah. Why isn't there a show called Everybody Loves Jeff Goldblum yet?
I don't know. I mean, he is probably somebody that's a little bit better in small doses.
Have you seen his show? The
No.
Jeff Blue. It's on.
He actually has a show.
Yeah, it's on Disney Plus.
Okay, so maybe I'm wrong.
I don't know what can't remember what it's called. Jeff Goldblum Explores the Universe. I don't.
Oh, okay. So it's like one of those kind of reality things.
Yeah, but he's very Jeff Goldblum, and I like it. But that small doses thing, I think, is pretty accurate.
Yeah, because he's always Jeff Goldblum.
Yeah,
in everything he does.
It's very interesting. Like I don't know if I'd want to hang out with Jeff Goldblum.
It would be really interesting to have a personality like that like basically your personality is, or I mean, I don't know if that's his real personality or if that's just what he puts on, but like that's what he's
he's
kind of always the same, and people love him for it. And
is it an act? I mean, because you can think of like someone like Bobcat Goldthwait, which is different because like that was a stand-up performance, but you see him in the movie and stuff. I mean, that's more like, I guess, Larry the Cable Guy comparison.
Yeah.
But maybe it's not. Like if Jeff Goldblum has just lived in this role forever and hasn't come out yet.
Yeah. Kind of interesting.
God, that's going to be a bombshell if that ever happens.
Yeah.
It's got a real high-pitched voice. All right. Well, this has been fun. We're going to stop this.
Yes. Yeah. That's a good idea.
But there's a promise of next time getting women on to talk about suffrage.
Or at some point.
At some point, maybe not next time.
Some women join us at some point.
Yes.
I think it would be a good idea.
Where's my stop button?
I think at some point we need to convince our wives to come on and do a show with us. I think it'd be really interesting.
We'll beg. Oh yeah, milliondollarfist.com. Anything for you?
No.
Okay. Bye-bye.
Oh.